I'm happy that at this point, there's almost nobody left on the public stage who's willing to outright defend the castration and mutilation of children. But if you ever did defend it, you are not welcome on Team Sanity. You will never be welcome here. Today we have, admittedly, an entirely unnecessary daily cancellation because we're going to cancel Gavin Newsom, a man who is by default always canceled on this show, and also a man whose flaws are so numerous and obvious that you don't need me to point them out for you. But we're going to cancel him anyway, just because I'm really annoyed by this clip that I'm about to play. The governor of California, soon-to-be presidential candidate, appeared recently on the Sean Ryan show, and towards the end of the interview, the subject turned to the trans issue. Newsom continued his unceremonious and unexplained, and as we'll see, very clumsy backpedal on the issue. This is a guy who was once such an enthusiastic peddler of extreme LGBT propaganda that he unironically used the term Latinx on multiple occasions, but now that he has ambitions to hold national office, he's pretending to be a more moderate voice. But he can't explain this pivot or articulate what exactly changed for him. And never has that been more obvious than when Sean Ryan asked Newsom how he feels about gender transitions for children. Newsom, who was once a big fan of castrating kids, now has this to say on the subject.
What about for your values? I mean, is 8 years old too young?
Yeah, I mean, look, I now that I have a 9-year-old, just became 9. Come on, man, I get it. So those are legit. You know, it's interesting. Just the issue of age. I haven't. It's interesting. I'm as someone that's been so focused on equality, broadly LGBT rights, particularly gay marriage. Mm-hmm. The trans issue for me is also novel. It's over the last few years, I'm trying to understand as much as anyone else. And this notion of gender affirming care for children, that's tough, man. And the science on that, I haven't dove that deep into it, but I read one report and then there's one that's slightly contradictory. And then they said, there's no contradictory. Here's what the UK just came out with. You're full of shit. It's absolutely scientifically sound that it's outrageous, and so it's intense.
Oh, well, okay then. Thank you for that eloquent dissertation on the topic, Governor. And just in case you missed any of this brilliant man's brilliant response, let me just read a partial transcript. This was his response to the question of whether 8-year-olds are too young for sex changes. A question that any rational adult should be able to answer in one simple word, which is yes. Yes, they're too young. Or 2 words, hell yes. Or at most 5 words, hell yes. Are you insane? That would be a fine answer too. But it took the governor a lot more than 5 words. Here's the transcript of what he said. He said, yeah, I mean, look, now that I have a 9-year-old, just became 9. Come on, man, I get it. So those are legit. It's interesting, just the issue of age. It's interesting as someone who's been so focused on equality broadly, LGBT, gay marriage, the trans issue for me is also novel. It's over the last few years, I'm trying to understand like anyone else, the whole pronoun thing. I'm trying to understand all that. That was all that stuff. I get it. Now, of course, you can't forget the hand signals when you're reading a Gavin Newsom quote. He's always doing the hand, I don't know what all this is. It looks like he's directing planes on a runway, or like he's a sign language interpreter who isn't actually fluent in sign language. Although based on that quote, it would also seem that he isn't fluent in English either. If you're stressed about back taxes, maybe you missed the April deadline, or your books are a mess, don't wait. The IRS is cracking down. Penalties add up fast, 5% per month, up to 25% just for not filing. But there's help. Tax Network USA can take the tax burden off of your shoulders and stop the spiral before it gets worse. They've helped thousands of Americans, whether you're an employee, a small business owner, or haven't filed in years. Messy books, no problem. They've seen it all and know exactly how to clean it up. With direct access to powerful IRS programs and expert negotiators on your side, Tax Network USA knows how to win, and you'll get a free consultation and learn all about if you qualify. They may even be able to reduce or eliminate what you owe. More importantly, they'll help protect you from wage garnishments or bank levies. So don't wait for the next IRS letter. Call 800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Walsh to talk to a real expert at Tax Network USA. Take the pressure off. Let Tax Network USA handle your tax issues. But in any case, there are just 2 points I want to make here, and we won't belabor it. But first of all, Newsom is attempting to moderate on the trans issue in the only way that he can. if he also wants to preserve any hope of winning a Democrat primary. So he can't come out and be fully rational and sane and clear, because rational, sane, clear people don't win Democrat primaries. But he also can't be a whack job trans activist, because whack job trans activists don't win general elections. This is the box that every Democrat on the national stage has created for themselves. Newsom is now staking out the only ground available to him, which is why he's adopting this kind of aw shucks tone of a guy who isn't quite sure what's going on, but he's trying to figure it out. It's all so complicated. It's tough. It's intense. It's so intense, man. Come on, man. This is a tough one. Jeez. It's like, wow. Am I right? Now, an approach like this would make a lot of sense and be totally credible if Sean Ryan had asked him to give his take on like quantum mechanics or something, but that's not what Ryan asked. Instead, he asked whether we should castrate 8-year-old boys to turn them into girls. It's not a tough question. It's not complicated. It's not something that you need to figure out. And you certainly shouldn't still be figuring it out years later. We're supposed to believe that Newsom has spent the last 10 years of his life deeply reflecting on the question of whether we should try to turn boys into girls. And 10 years into these reflections, he still isn't sure. This is supposed to be a more palatable response than a full-fledged endorsement of trans ideology. But if anything, it somehow manages to be, I would argue, maybe less palatable. It kind of reminds me of the people that you run into on occasion, online anyway, who will say that they aren't in the flat earth cult, but they're open to the flat earth arguments. You know, you hear that every once in a while. And I can understand conceptually, I can understand the concept of someone being totally insane and thinking that the earth is flat. I can also understand being sane and normal and knowing that the earth isn't flat. I can't understand knowing that the earth isn't flat, but being open to the possibility that it is. And that's the kind of middle ground between insanity and sanity that Newsom and many other Democrats are trying to stake for themselves, and it just doesn't work. It will never work. Secondly, as we see all these former believers in the trans cause throw down their trans flags and retreat, I do want to make another thing very clear, which is that I'm happy that at this point, there's almost nobody left on the public stage who's willing to outright defend the castration and mutilation of children. Almost nobody will outright defend it. And that's a very positive development. But if you ever did defend it, you are not welcome on Team Sanity. You will never be welcome here. Like, I know we're supposed to be gracious and merciful after winning the battle, but frankly, I'm not a very gracious or merciful person. I don't pretend to be. Not on an issue like this, because if you ever claimed that men are women, that biological sex doesn't exist, that men can get pregnant, that boys can become girls, it tells us that you are either so incredibly stupid as to have bought into that propaganda, or that you're so incredibly soulless and dishonest and cowardly as to have pretended that you bought into it. In either case, you have permanently discredited yourself. It's the same reason why I would never trust a sex predator around my kids or anyone else's kids, even if he claims to have reformed and changed his ways. It's the same reason why I'll never trust the word of a pathological liar, even if he says he isn't a pathological liar anymore. There are things you can do in life, positions you can take, things you can say, that are so deeply deranged and debased and evil that they become permanent, irreversible stains on your reputation and your credibility. And this is one of those things. Now, of course, there are a million other reasons why Gavin Newsom has no credibility and should never be trusted or taken seriously. This is just one of them. And it's also just one of the reasons, though a very significant reason, why Gavin Newsom is today canceled. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.